Hi, welcome back. In this video, we will be looking at how you can actually check your code to make sure that you don't have any errors and that everything is written as correctly as possible. So a couple things that I want to make you aware of that's on Canvas, and just a reminder, this might look a little bit different from what your Canvas shell looks like. So under week one's module, if you scroll down to the resources section, you will find a link here to W3C HTML validator. And this is the validator that we're going to use to check for any errors in our code. You can also find this under the resources section. If you go to the HTML5 section, there's an HTML validator. Once we finally go into CSS, you'll notice there is a CSS validator. So those are good places to go back and look at it, because when you get further along in the semester and you get to, let's say, week 2 or week 3, you're no longer going to have this link every time. And so that will help you. Though, to be honest, and you'll notice this is the validator that is by the W3C. So it's the best place to go to validate your code. Every once in a while, they do a server update and it'll be offline, but this is going to give you a lot of feedback on your code to make sure that you have everything correct. If you can't remember how to find this address, you can always go to a search engine. My default's DuckDuckGo, but I'm going to go to Google because that might be what's more familiar to you. And you could just type in HTML validation, and it's going to take you to the validator w3.org. And then same thing if you type in CSS validation. It's a little bit harder to know for sure because this is jigsaw.w3.org, but this is going to be the link you're looking for. It's usually the very first one that comes up when you go to a search engine, whether it's Google or it's DuckDuckGo or Yahoo or whatever sort of search engine you use, you'll be able to find it pretty easily. All right, so there's that file that I want you to be aware of. And then under the lecture content, this might be a little bit different. I might have decided to put it in a different place, like resources or homework. It's not exactly homework, it's more like an activity. So right now, at least I have it under the lecture content area, but there's this HTML file. And what I want you to do is I want you to download it. So what you could do is you can click on it, and my internet's being a little bit slow today, and you're going to click on download, and then that should download to wherever you have your files download to. I'm going to go ahead and minimize all my stuff, and I've already got mine downloaded to this desktop. So what you'll do with this file is open up your text editor, and then you can just click and drag it in, or you can go to File, Open, and then it'll prompt you to choose a file that you want to open. And since it's already open, it'll be here. And I actually have the directions. I'm going to actually open this in Firefox. And so the directions are actually written in the file, so you'll be able to get an idea for it. So it says, validate me. Visit the W3C Schools website to validate this HTML page. There are a few things wrong with this HTML page as a group. Now, when I do this face-to-face, I will often ask people to work in partners so they can kind of help each other work things out. If you want to, you can write in the discussions on Canvas and you can give some clues to other people if you're having a hard time, or you can check with me. What I'm going to do for this video, though, is I'm going to tell you pause, and then basically you can try to work it out on your own. Again, this isn't like for homework or anything. There's not any credit. It's technically optional, but I would really encourage that you do this activity because it's going to help you familiarize yourself with validating the code. And so I'm going to ask you to pause and then go and try to fix things on your own and then get as far as you can. And then rather than having you work with another person in a group to troubleshoot things, what you can do is you can continue watching the rest of the video and I will help you figure out what's wrong. So anyways, let's finish reading this. As a group, you'll run this code through an HTML validator. Make the necessary changes required to make the code validate correctly. If you get stuck, you can ask your instructor for help. And then I've got the link here, and then it says visit the validation website, run the HTML page through validation, fix code as best as you can. So we've got kind of a visual representation. And what's great about this is this seems clear enough. You know, it doesn't look like there's any issues, but actually there are going to be some issues. All right, I opened a tab here so that way these could be closer together and I don't have to have so many things open at the same time. So what you'll notice is when you go to this website, you can type in an address, you can upload a file, or you can do a direct input. So if you were to do an address, I'm going to pick on the school a little bit. You can just type in the URL. You can click on check. And it might get a bit of a message about needing to wait. Now, it does say that there's some errors with our school's website. I would say that this isn't really that alarming because a lot of times when you are working with a content management system, a CMS, you will often get this sort of error. An example would be, because you're probably not familiar with the term CMS, content management system, an example would be like a website that was made using WordPress, for example. So all of these things exist, but something about how the template was designed, it's not quite recognizing the character set and the meta tag information. But my guess would be that it actually is correct. It's just showing as something being a little bit off about it. I feel like that's kind of typical when you have a content management system. You're not writing something from scratch. And it is okay to have a few errors, but you really want to try to have as few as possible. So we've got this address option. I'm going to go back so it looks kind of the same as what you would expect when you first start. So we also have file upload, and then we have direct input. So direct input, you could type something. Maybe you're not exactly sure how you should write an unordered list, for example. So you could write something and then you could check it. Now, one of the things that will happen if you're typing something into the direct input and you're not putting in all the information that you would normally have in a page, it's going to give you some errors because you're missing those things that are required in a page. So for example, it's saying, by the way, it's a good idea to have your language set as part of your HTML tag. So that's going to give you a warning. It's not completely as bad as an error. And then it's saying as an error, it was expecting us to say which version of HTML file or which version of HTML we are using, for example, HTML5, and we didn't. And then it's saying the head section is missing a title, and that also is an error. And then there's other things too that it needs. For example, it's saying the head is missing a title, but we don't even have a head section either. We don't have a body or anything. But these are the things in particular that it's pointing out that are problems. So even if you're wanting to check out something simple like this, and you just want to look at the individual piece, you need to know what this sort of feedback means. So that way, none of this has to do anything with the unordered list. So my unordered list is fine. There isn't any feedback on the unordered list or the LI being wrong. So I know that's fine. So just because I have this doesn't mean that the individual piece is not correct. All right, so then I'm going to do file upload, and I can choose by browsing. going to choose this validate me. And then what my recommendation is to just go in order. It can be a little bit overwhelming when you see something like this, but it's not atypical. Go through, and sometimes you'll have one error that causes errors for multiple things. So you could have one thing wrong and it's causing 5 different errors or something. So if you think that something's related, then I would recommend saving and then re-uploading. But some things you might as well just kind of hold off on for starters. So these are all of the errors. And this would be the point where I would say, if you want to test yourself, go ahead and hit pause and just kind of stop the video. Try to go through on your own and see if you can kind of figure out what these things are referencing. This is something that's a really important skill to be able to know how to go through and read this feedback. So you want to make sure that you know how to process it. Otherwise, it's okay if you want to just work along together and then be able to try it on your own. Maybe just kind of first watch through and listen and kind of see what I'm talking about, and then go and kind of do it on your own. You could do that too. All right, so hit pause if you want to test yourself. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and continue with this. All right, so we do want to work with the warnings. So we've got first, consider adding a language attribute to the HTML. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize this a little bit so I can see it at the same time. Hopefully that won't be too big of an issue. And this is where it'd be good for you to also double check to your template. You know, is there anything different in your template than we have here? So this is saying that we want to consider adding a language attribute to the HTML start tag. That's pretty straightforward. We know what the HTML start tag is. We know what an attribute is. So we're going to say language. And then it's not telling us that we have to set it to English, but you should hopefully know that you need to set it to English. So that's going to take care of the first one. And what it will tell you is this going to tell you some information. It's not always going to be completely accurate to where it's pointing things out. So for example, here it says at line 2, column 34 to line 3, column 6. So it's saying, and the columns are how many characters across, and then the lines sometimes correlate to this. It was saying from line 2 to 3. So it's not really accurate. You know, if you were to look at this first, you might think, oh, well, it's line 2, but line 2 doesn't even have an HTML tag on it. You might have to go to the line up or line down, but they'll give you kind of a starting point. And here it actually has the HTML highlighted, so it's telling you, you know, this is what you're looking for. And then it does give you some links that could potentially help. Sometimes it doesn't always help. Okay, next we have the character encoding was not declared proceeding using Windows 1252. So it's saying because we haven't said what character set to use, it's just going to choose one by default. It doesn't know if it's actually accurate or not. It's not a good idea to use this, but it's telling us I don't know what else to do. So this is where you would have to just know that in order to add in the character encoding. So when you see something that says character encoding, you want to know that that's going to mean this character set. And we're going to use UTF-8. And that's going to add our encoding. That's going to actually give us an error if you forget to do that. All right, so this one, and that one didn't say a line because it just didn't exist. So you're going to have to know that that goes in the head section. Next, we've got end tag for an H1 is seen, but there were open elements. And then it's saying it's on line 8 to line 8. So it says it's on line 8. This is not correct. On the body, there is no H1. Again, it's one of those things of it's close to it. Sometimes it's kind of whatever's the last thing that was correct before it, and then you kind of hop down a line. So it's very often that you'll go a line further than what this says. It is highlighting the bold tag. So that's actually, sorry, I was looking at the wrong one. But actually, sometimes if you're not really sure what it's talking about, if you look at some other ones, sometimes it'll help illuminate what could be wrong with it. So we have end tag of an H1 is seen, but there were open elements. So it's saying something has not been closed before this point. And so it's violating the nesting rules. And then here we have unclosed element B, and it's highlighting where the B is. So it's saying, okay, you didn't close this. And then you'll notice if we keep scrolling, there's a problem here with B, a problem here with B, a problem here with B. So it's one of those ones that every single thing that follows after it is having problems. You'll notice here that all of this text is bold, and it's because we haven't closed that tag, and so it's affecting everything. So we'd want to go here and change that. Now this would be one of those cases where there's so many issues that are being caused by it that we might as well save it and re-upload it. So that way we can kind of keep track of things. So I would go ahead and do browse, choose it again after saving it, hit check, and then we got rid of a bunch of it. Now we're kind of down to half. All right, so this one we've got element li not allowed as child of element body in this context, suppressing further errors from this subtree. And this is saying that is from line 12 to column 9 to line 12, column 12. And we've got some other errors. Now it's also giving us a little bit of information here inside. So context in which an element li may be used. An li can be used inside of an ordered list or an unordered list. So what's happening here is I created a list and all the items in it, but I didn't actually put it inside of a list. And so it's telling me I can choose either an ordered list or an unordered list. I need to pick one of them. And then we have, well, these are related to something else. So we'll finish this first. So it's kind of up to you on if you want to put this in an ordered list or an unordered list. We have visit the schools or the W3 schools validation website, run the HTML page through the validation, fix the code as best you can. I would say that sounds like a particular order. Technically, some of it you could kind of go back and forth, fix it, run it, fix it, run it. So those are kind of the key things that you're going to do. I would take either option, either an ordered list or an unordered list. It's up to you. I'm going to say that there's not a correct answer for that. And I'm going to highlight those and tab them. Okay, so now we have an ordered list, so we shouldn't get that error anymore. I'm going to wait a little bit before I run that again. All right, so this says end tag li seen, but there were open elements. Oh, you know what? I'm going to save it because we do have these references to the lines, and those are no longer going to be accurate anymore because we added 2 tags. So let me save that. I'm going to re-upload it. So these references still count. And what you could do too, you could always highlight all of this and just copy it in and do the text input too. You wouldn't have to keep loading it. I prefer to actually upload the file. All right, so now we've got end tag li seen, but there were open elements. So we're missing another end tag. Missing end tags is a very common error to have, and that's why I put so many of them in here. I try to pick things that were common beginner mistakes. All right, so from line 13 to line 13, and then this is a bit of spoiler. I know the answer already, so I'm cheating a little bit, but these are going to be related. We've got an li here, and then we've got an anchor link here. And this is where it's kind of happening at. So we also have unclosed element A. So there's an issue with an open element and an unclosed element. And what this is really referring to is we're violating the nesting order. We've got the LI has started, and then we started an anchor link inside of it, and then we ended the list item first before we ended the anchor link. And so they are overlapping, they're cutting into each other, if you can kind of think of that. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that to have them nest correctly, the anchor link needs to end first, and then the LI will end. And that happens very often, that people accidentally mix those up. And then we have no anchor link element in scope, but an end tag is seen. So what's happening is a lot of times it will realize, okay, well, something's wrong here. I don't have the end tag. And so the browser, when it's running it, it'll just kind of invent an end tag for you. And then what's going to happen is, even though we don't see it, technically we have an invented one that it adds in for us, and then we have our original one. So the error that we're getting is basically treating it as if we have these in the wrong order, but then it also is saying, well, you know what, now we have a spare end tag and we don't need it because it doesn't really exist. So if you get something like that and you don't really understand the logic, that actually happens a lot too. Like, let's say that you have, this is a bit of a tangent, but let's say that you put the H1 up here. This is another common error that people often do, where let's say the homework assignment, it tells you, put a title in the head section. And so you think, oh yeah, I'll put the title's in the H1. And so you might put it up there. You might also put it in the header, and you might put it up there, and that's the wrong spot. Just try to remember that anything visual that you see on the page needs to be in the body. So what happens in this kind of case, and we could actually validate it. What happens though is it sees that there's something that should be on the page, and it creates its own body tag, and it starts this body tag. And you'll notice, the body's supposed to begin after the head section. So you'll get an error, and we'll go ahead and just test this out. I'll save this so we can see what kind of error we would get from that. So it's saying we have a straight end head tag. So it's saying, well, this is weird. This is completely in the wrong place. That's not true. The head section is in the right place. It's not stray. It's something before it is actually causing the problem. So you have to be kind of careful. And then we have start tag body scene, but an element of the same type was already open. And it's saying, okay, we started the body here. And this is another one where you would see it and you would think, what are you talking about? I only have one body opening tag. I haven't started any other ones. There's only the one here and the one here. But because this is something that would normally be in the body, there's this invisible body that is being added because the browser knows that it has to be inside of a body. And so it adds one to your code for you. So that's essentially what's going on there. So let me actually move this back to where it needs to be. Save that again, and then we can re-upload this. All right, so we got, we got another one. So this is another common one. I forgot that I had put this in here. So we've got start body scene, but an element of the same type was already open. Now what this is, it does say line 21. This is saying that we forgot to put, I say we, as if you had anything to do with the fact that I put all these errors in. I forgot to put in the /. And so the / is what terminates the tag and closes it. And so because I didn't put that, it's seeing it as being two opening tags. So I'd need to save that. And then we have end of file scene when looking for tag name, ignoring the tag. This is the sort of error that's so hard to catch because your eyes. You tend to focus on things and kind of see what you're expecting to see, especially when you've been working on something for a long time. It can be really helpful to just have another person take a look at something for you. This is just saying that we're missing the greater than symbol. And something that I often see is people might just completely miss having the end HTML or the end body or something. So we could save it real quick and see what kind of error you would see for something like that. Oh, I guess it's not going to catch those errors. So you do have to be kind of careful. Basically it knows like, okay, well, those should be there. Let me just double check that I saved it, because I'm surprised that it would actually go ahead with it. Yeah, that would not be correct. You do need to make sure that you have. Let's make sure we've got those end. All right, so now we've got everything that we need. I'm trying to think if there's any other errors that I could think of adding in here that would be sort of typical. Usually that's the biggest thing, is forgetting to have the language set, forgetting to have the meta character set, putting something like the H1 inside of the head. It could be forgetting to close the head. One of the things I like about these text editors is you can often double check your tags by clicking on them. If you click on the open or the end tag, it should highlight the other one. So you can kind of quickly read through and skim to make sure you have everything. That's what I do when I grade, is I will click on things and just kind of double check to see if there's issues. And that's where indenting can make things a lot easier to be able to check. Another common issue early on, like I said, it's basically just making sure that you have things nested in the right order, having your end tags, making sure that you have your / on your end tags, and making sure you have things in the right order and that you're not forgetting something. So this will give you the basics for validation, and then as more gets introduced, you'll end up having more issues kind of come out in the validation. If you ever feel like you don't understand what the validation is telling you, feel free to contact me and I can help show you how to read what you're being told. But that's going to be an expectation of the class, that especially like when you get to the final, I grade very hard when it comes to validation for the final project, because basically after this semester, if you don't know how to read this feedback, that's going to be an issue. So it is going to be something that you're graded on. So you want to make sure that you get your files to validate both the HTML and eventually the CSS. So if you do have questions, or like, for example, if you still have some questions after watching this video, maybe it's something that you saw and I didn't quite address it, go ahead and feel free to leave a comment in one of the discussions, or you can send me a message and I'll get back to you and I can walk you through it as well.